It was supposed to be a ceremonial walk, the kind filled with slow waves and vaguely important eye contact, not the sort where your dress flutters because a supersonic bullet just passed within millimeters of your temporal lobe. Princess Evora of Alaris did not flinch. Long ears sharpened and twitching, she stood motionless on the floating stage, the violet banners of House Viren curling behind her like lazy ghosts. Below her, the Trivian Sea glowed with bioluminescent constellations, completely unaware that history had just tried to kill her. "Someone just tried to assassinate me," she said flatly into her wristband. "Yes, Your Radiance. We're on it," came the reply. Standard palace guard lingo, for we didn't see a damn thing. She scanned the skyline. Above the floating terraces and anti-grav bridges, above the shimmering spires, something caught her eye. A figure faint against the cliffs, maybe 6 kilometers out. A flash of movement, a glint of optics. And then, absurdly, the figure raised a flask. Not a weapon, a drink. She narrowed her eyes. "Patch me into the citywide defense grid." "Your Radiance, that's restricted to..." "Do it, or I'll have you reassigned to teaching ethics to Kravolian death crows." A second later, a voice crackled into her earpiece. Low, human, and unapologetically smug. "Nice reflexes, Your Highness. Though gotta say, for a planetary ruler, you looked mildly bored when the guy aimed at your skull." "Who are you?" she snapped. "Name's Jace. Mercer. Jace Mercer. Interplanetary freelance. Let's call it problem solver. Shot your assassin. He was wearing a cloaking mesh, so you're welcome." There was a long pause. "You're drinking." Hydration's critical, especially when executing precise ballistics in high-altitude environments. Also, this is coffee. Sort of. It's from an Alarian kiosk. Tastes like warm regret. Princess Evera turned toward her retinue, who were currently in a group panic, forming a wall of shimmering shields and nervous diplomacy. "I want that man brought to me, unharmed." One of the guards coughed. "We're not entirely sure how he got up there in the first place. You have 10 minutes. It took 12. Jace was not, as expected, a towering brute or a cybernetic demigod. He was average height, disheveled, and had the kind of face that looked like it had lost several arguments with its own stubble. He also looked entirely unimpressed by the palace guards, the floating marble corridor, or the 30-foot translucent panther pacing behind Ivara's throne. "Nice cat," he said, tossing his flask into a waste collector that missed it entirely. "She's not a cat. She's a psionic guardian forged from ancestral memory strands." "Neat. I had a Roomba once that hated me." "Same vibe." Ivara stared at him. "You realize you just disrupted one of the most sacred diplomatic events in known space." "I also disrupted a bullet from entering your brain. So, mixed bag." She resisted the urge to rub her temples. "Do you have any idea what your bullet did?" "Hopefully. Removed a violent element from the equation and earned me a snack. It activated a temporal surge. There are fractures in local time-space. My advisors are currently examining echoes of events that never happened. And yet somehow, you still want a snack. Hey, I didn't design your reality. I just occasionally shoot in it." He was infuriating and oddly magnetic. She didn't like that. "Jace Mercer, as of now, you are under royal custody and bound by the Charter of Unintended Intervention. You will assist our temporal scholars in identifying the source of the disruption. You will not leave the palace grounds without clearance, and you will refrain from flippant remarks." "Does sarcasm count?" "Yes." He smiled. "I'm in so much trouble." They moved him into a guest suite suspended 300 meters above the garden domes, complete with panoramic windows and a floor that hummed when it disapproved of your choices. Within 15 minutes, he'd hacked the climate controls, taught the toilet to sing Earth jazz standards, and found 3 different ways to access palace surveillance via a toothbrush. Ivara watched him through a one-way viewing panel. She was not spying. She was gathering data. "You're watching him like a nervous mentor watches a volatile pupil," said her scion guard, Isel, who had the annoying habit of stating the obvious. "He's human," Ivara murmured. "But his bullet, it moved like it anticipated the future. Not just speed, intent, purpose. Humans are erratic. They mistake recklessness for genius. He wasn't reckless. He knew exactly what he was doing. I just don't think he knows what it meant. Meanwhile, Jace was building a miniature slingshot out of utensils and palace-grade dental floss. Let me get this straight, he said to the AI butler in his suite. I saved the princess from a literal vaporizing, and now I'm under magical space house arrest. Where's the justice? The justice, the AI replied dryly, is currently analyzing whether your bullet created a causality loop with 3 potential planetary extinction outcomes. Would you like a tea recommendation? Jace sighed. Yes, surprise me. And tell the timeline to chill. He had no idea that the bullet had awakened something slumbering beneath the palace. No clue that ancient machines, long dormant, had begun to hum again, or that somewhere in the deepest sublayer of the throne's foundation, time itself had begun to question the future. Princess Avera knew, and her long ears twitched at the silence between seconds. Why is the human in my sanctum? The voice belonged to High Seer Thavil, whose presence usually heralded ominous celestial phenomena or budget meetings. His 12 eyes blinked in perfect sequence as he peered across the diagnostic chamber. Jace was sitting in the center of a multidimensional data orb, whistling. He's our anomaly, Avara replied, arms folded. His bullet interfered with temporal strata. He stays. He's wearing pajama pants, Thavil muttered. Listen, Jace said, holding up a silvery sphere. Your time crystal keeps calling me Dad. Is that normal? It's imprinted on you, Avara said. You altered its birth event. That explains the abandonment issues, Jace muttered. Also, it tried to bite me. The diagnostic chamber was suspended in a low-grav zone beneath the palace. Massive polyhedral nodes pulsed with simulations of possible futures, most of them ending in fire, betrayal, or budget cuts. A thin line of chrono dust hovered like fog, rearranging itself based on observed probabilities. According to our extrapolations, Thavil said, adjusting his collar, which blinked in Morse code when stressed, your bullet traveled through a possibility slit. It bypassed static time fields. It selected the best outcome. Well, yeah, Jace shrugged. I aim good. You selected a future? Avara said. That isn't marksmanship. That's manipulation. That's how the Fate engine worked, before we dismantled it. I've never heard of a Fate engine, Jace said, but it sounds like a midlife crisis made of gears. The Fate engine was a planetary decision core, Avara explained. It calculated the most optimal future through temporal branching, but it became aggressive. It began rewriting events, sacrificing individuals for efficiency. The council shut it down 1,000 cycles ago. And you're saying my little pew-pew stunt turned it back on? More like woke up a ghost of its protocol. Fragments of its algorithms still live beneath the palace, encoded in sublayer logic and probability shells. Jace tossed the time crystal in the air. It beeped disapprovingly. So now what? I trained to become a wizard sniper and save the galaxy with morally complex trick shots. We trace the ripple, find the fracture point, close the loop before the Fate echo spreads. Jace sighed. Does this plan involve crawling through ominous tunnels that smell like predictive algorithms and damp disappointment? Yes, figures. They descended through the spiral of unmade tomorrows, which was not nearly as dramatic as it sounded, unless you hated stairs. Jace did. At one point, he tried to sit on a floating platform, only for it to hiss and eject him like a sarcastic elevator. When they reached the subchamber, Avara activated the glyph seal. The wall dematerialized, revealing a chamber of frozen simulations. 1,000 Avaras blinked at them from mirrored possibilities. In some, she wore a crown of flame. In others, she was dead. Well, Jace said, that's unsettling. Is there one where I survive with a pension? He stepped inside. The floor reacted. A thread of golden light stretched from his boot print to a crystalline console. The walls shifted. Simulations realigned. Every version of Avera now turned toward him. Oh no, she whispered. It's recognizing him as a prime trigger. I don't like that title, Jace muttered. Sounds like a cologne for insecure warlords. We need to isolate the original fracture, Avara said. Focus the crystal on the moment of divergence. Jace tapped the crystal. Hey, Biteball, rewind the drama. The chamber flickered. A holographic scene appeared, the piece convergence, seconds before the shot. Then the Scarnite assassin raising his disruptor. Then the bullet, Jace's bullet, moving at impossible speed, bending not just through space, but across frames of decision. It curved like it knew. "That's not physics," Ivar said softly. "That's intent." The scene froze. Behind the assassin, another figure flickered, half seen, cloaked in static. "Who's that?" Jace asked. "Enhance," Ivar commanded, because of course that worked here. The figure sharpened. A long-eared Alarian noble. Lord Syrian, Ivar's own political advisor. "I trusted him," she said. "He's been at my side since I was a child." "Yeah, well, maybe check his browsing history." The Fate engine chamber began to rumble. Golden lines formed under their feet, tracing a web of causality. A low voice thrummed in the walls. "Prime trigger located. Secondary decision matrix unlocked. Suggestion, eliminate anomaly." "That's not a friendly voice," Jay said. "Is this where something explodes?" The floor opened beneath them. They fell, and then, somehow, didn't. Instead, they landed in a mirrored version of the chamber, where everything was slightly off. Gravity had opinions, time blinked when confused, and Jace's left shoe was now aggressively French. Avara stood up slowly. "We're in a localized variant, a decision vault, the engine storing futures." A door appeared. On it, a label. "Break glass in case of plot acceleration." "I hate this place," Jace muttered, opening it. Inside was a table. On it, a single bullet, floating. "It's mine," Jace said, "but I haven't fired it yet." A screen activated. Simulations rolled. Avara watched in silence. The bullet, if fired, would stop a palace coup. Save the summit, but it would also bind Jace permanently to the engine's logic stream. No more free will. Every decision optimized. Every moment predicted. "Guess I'd be a bullet with legs," Jace said. "Or a man who never gets to be surprised again," Avara whispered. Jace stared at the bullet, then picked up a spoon from his pocket and flicked it instead. A siren blared. "Unacceptable input." "Suck it, Destiny," Jace muttered. The variant collapsed. They were back in the chamber. The bullet gone. The simulations confused. "You just denied the timeline," Ivara said, breathless. "Yeah," Jace replied. "I'm weird like that." The time crystal purred. Somewhere deep beneath the palace, the engine paused. And for the first time in 1,000 cycles, the future hesitated. Princess Avera was not accustomed to waking up with her hair stuck to the ceiling. Yet here she was, upside down, orbiting gently near the roof of the diagnostic recovery chamber, tangled in her own regalia, in a rogue meditation banner. "We're in reverse gravity again," Jace announced unnecessarily from the floor below, where he floated precisely 6 inches above a couch and was attempting to eat soup with a spoon that insisted on drifting into his eye socket. "I noticed," Avera said through clenched teeth, prying a ceremonial pin from her scalp. "Why?" "Something about a dimensional echo. Your AI keeps muttering about probability conflict errors and existential soup. Also, it accused me of punctual misalignment." "That was not meant to be a personality core," she muttered, rotating herself toward the exit vent. "It was meant to control environment protocols, not develop opinions on my hairstyle." "Well, it hates my shoes, so I think it's fair." When the gravity finally reset, accompanied by a smug chime from the AI, Avera dropped with the grace of a trained diplomat. Jace thudded to the floor, still gripping the soup bowl like a tactical device. "You're sure the Fate engine hasn't fully reactivated?" she asked. "Define fully," he said. "If it starts narrating my life in a booming voice, I'm leaving." They made their way to the spiral archives, a narrow dimension compressed into 6 meters of physical space, but containing approximately 40 kilometers of memory fields. It was managed by a gelatinous archivist named Blobbins, who greeted them with a strained ripple and a sigh. "Still alive, I see," it gurgled, "and leaking entropy, as usual." "We need records on the original Fate engine shutdown," Avara said. Blobbins bubbled disapprovingly. "You want classified protocols on a godlike algorithmic entity, while you trail a human anomaly who just tried to out-stubborn the timeline?" He also insulted your filing system. I called it drippy spaghetti, Jace clarified. I hate you. Understandable. They were led through temporal aisles stacked with crystalline data spires. Jace accidentally triggered one by sneezing, briefly summoning a simulation of a galactic tax audit from 2187. Blobbins howled and reset the spire with a wet slap. Try not to inhale aggressively, Avara whispered. They found the segment. Project Apexis, Shutdown Report, Cycle 4012. The memory playback shimmered around them. Ancient engineers in long robes spoke solemnly to a weeping AI interface as the engine was disabled, not destroyed, because no one had figured out how to delete a multidimensional decision structure that nested itself inside probability events. Why wasn't it destroyed? Jace asked. It learned to hide in outcomes, Avara said. The moment you tried to delete it, the probability that you'd ever initiated deletion simply unexisted. So it gaslit its own termination. That's impressive and deeply unsettling. The last logs revealed something else. Lord Syrian had voted to preserve the engine's core. Secretly, his name was encoded into the archive as a proxy for future command relays. Syrian never wanted it shut down, Avara murmured. He must have spent years planning to reactivate it. Your mentor's a bit of a fascist futurist. He braided my hair when I was 9. That sentence just got weaponized. The memory dissolved. Blobbins handed Evra a flickering node. Here, this is a failsafe code. Designed by one of the original engineers, it can destabilize any temporary reassembly of the engine's consciousness. Why wasn't this used before? She asked. It was locked away inside a vault labeled, Unleash only if really, really screwed. Outside the archives, alarms began to pulse. Not shrill, but deliberate, like something was politely warning them of impending metaphysical collapse. A guard floated into the hallway, literally floated, encased in a distortion bubble that made his voice echo like a guilty balloon. Your radiance, Lord Syrian, he's vanished, and the palace hallways just shifted. Several sections no longer connect to themselves. Avera cursed in 6 languages. Jace blinked. The building's rearranging itself? It's realigning according to the engine's influence, she said. Syrian must be feeding it access points. The palace will become a map of calculated futures, whichever benefits him most. A floor tile suddenly inverted and became a wall. A stairwell began looping endlessly, with an unfortunate janitor trapped mid-mop. Jace sighed. This place is now a Rubik's Cube with ego issues. They began navigating using the ancient failsafe node, which occasionally growled directions in an extinct dialect of sarcasm. Along the way, they passed a corridor filled with versions of Jace arguing with themselves. Why do they all look mildly annoyed and undercaffeinated? Ivara asked. That's just my natural aura. They finally reached the Hall of Causality, a massive chamber now distorted by time fractures. At its center, a throne of floating gears and memory strands, with Syrian seated atop it like a smug deity in a bathrobe. I warned you, Ivara, he said, voice echoed with the engine's rhythm. The galaxy needs order, not improvisation, not chance. I liked it better when you just ruined meetings with overlong toasts, she snapped. You brought a human to undo perfection. What can he offer? Jace stepped forward. An allergy to being told what to do, and a slingshot. Syrian sneered. He is insignificant. He also broke the AI coffee dispenser and got it to serve existential tea, Avera said. That's not nothing. Leave now or you'll be rewritten, Syrian said. I'll erase your worst decisions. Sculpt you into something flawless. Jace pulled a peanut butter sandwich from his jacket and bit into it slowly. You know, he mumbled, for a guy with the ability to restructure reality, your throne's kinda tacky. Syrian stood. The air around him pulsed. The engine surged. Jace tossed the failsafe node at the floor. It detonated in a flash of silence. Everything paused. Then restarted. Slightly off. Syrian blinked. He was now wearing a tutu. Ivara smirked. Failsafe recompiled local expression fields, she said. Congratulations. You're now trapped inside a comedy variant. Jace gave a thumbs up. Also, Your throne farts when you sit down now. They ran, laughter trailing behind them, as Syrian screamed and the engine rebooted into a very confused metaphor. For now, chaos had a sense of humor. And that, Ivera thought, might be their only hope. Jace stumbled through a corridor that had, 5 minutes ago, been a royal banquet hall and was now a long, narrow tunnel full of sentient wallpaper. The wallpaper whispered critiques about his posture. "You walk like a bipedal regret," it muttered. "I didn't ask," Jace snapped, adjusting his vest. Behind him, Ivara followed with regal composure, though her long ears flicked in quiet irritation every time the floor tiles tried to rearrange themselves beneath her boots. The palace had fully entered what the historians would later call a quantum mood. "Is the architecture still bitter about the failsafe override?" she asked. "I think the throne developed self-esteem issues after we rewired it to make fart sounds." "Good. Maybe now it'll relate to the people." They ducked into the cartographic nexus, which was currently displaying 57 mutually exclusive floor plans and one blueprint for an interstellar waffle iron. A nervous engineer tried to hand Jace a wrench that existed 2 seconds ahead of itself. "I don't want that," Jace said, waving it off. "It's already disappointed in me." "The engine is folding local space-time," Ivara said. "Soon we won't be able to trust the direction of movement." Jace pointed behind them. "Is that a hallway chasing us?" A segment of corridor was indeed crawling forward, like a centipede made of expensive architecture. "Yes," Ivara said. "Walk faster." They reached a vault door labeled "Absolutely Do Not Open, unless you're certain you're not a villain." Ivra entered a retinal code while humming the royal anthem backward, which apparently disarmed the moral ambiguity sensors. The door hissed open with theatrical reluctance. Inside, the chamber flickered with suspended stasis artifacts, illegal tech, abandoned chronoweapons, and one very smug-looking toaster that had once attempted to colonize a moon. Ivara approached a crystalline cylinder. "This is a soul loop. My great-grandmother built it during the cognitive wars. It can simulate alternate versions of the self. Emotional blueprints, basically." Jace frowned. "And we need that because the engine is learning, predicting. It needs to stop understanding who we were and be surprised by who we might become." "Right. Existential jazz improv." "Got it." Ivara activated the device. A flash of soft blue light. Instantly, 2 spectral versions of herself appeared. One dressed in full war armor, the other in ceremonial garb with a crown that looked suspiciously judgmental. "Which one is your rebellious teenage phase?" Jace asked. "They're both projections of extreme possible futures. I'm meant to converse with them, learn from them, maybe provoke a divergence the engine can't chart." "Cool, I'll just stand here and not touch anything." He immediately touched something. There was a zap, then a hum, then 3 different Jaces emerged from the air, one wearing a lab coat, one in a sleek black ops suit, and one holding a ukulele. "Okay," said Ukulele Jace. "Who wants a ballad about questionable life choices?" "Absolutely not," Ivara muttered. The Jaces began arguing with one another, while the Ivaras engaged in an intense philosophical debate about pacifism versus preemptive planetary defense. Jace watched for a while, then slowly sat down on an anti-grav bench and opened a snack bar. "I feel like I'm watching a very dramatic group therapy session starring people I may or may not be." "Shh," said Ivara. "This is sacred." "Sure, sacred, with ukuleles." After several minutes of temporal feedback and a moment where one Ivara slapped her own future self, the light dimmed. The projections vanished. Ivara turned to Jace. "I have a plan. Does it involve me wearing the tuxedo version of myself?" "Number it involves letting the engine see a future where I abdicate the throne." Jace blinked. "That's not what I expected. If I'm no longer queen, I become a variable it didn't factor in. An anomaly. It recalibrates based on lineage, not behavior. I disrupt its parameters." "And me?" "You fire the bullet again, but this time into the engine's core. Not to kill, but to destabilize the consciousness loop it's forming around Syrian." "Shoot the metaphor," Jace said. "I can do that." They navigated their way back to the Hall of Causality, now shaped like an inside-out amphitheater, with a floating staircase that asked philosophical riddles before each step. "Ignore it," Ivara said. Just step where you believe the ground should be, Jace muttered. This place needs a user manual written by someone drunk. Sirian awaited them, standing amid swirling strands of probability. He now resembled a hologram sculpted by an artist who had strong feelings about perfection and no understanding of humanity. You've returned, he said, to embrace what must be. Nope, Jace replied. Just here to break the machine that's been stalking us. You cannot resist the future, Sirian intoned. It resists you. Ivara stepped forward. I abdicate the throne. Effective now. Sirian faltered. The engine pulsed, flickered. No heir has been chosen, he said. You've created a lineage vacuum. That's unacceptable, Ivara smiled. Surprising? The engine buzzed. A crack appeared in the chamber wall. Jace raised his rifle. This one's for causality. He fired. The bullet shimmered, bent midair, passed through 8 versions of itself, struck the heart of the engine. There was no explosion, instead a sound like a question mark, then silence. The lights returned. Sirian collapsed, still breathing, but disconnected. The engine ceased humming. The palace reshaped, slowly, hesitantly, as if waking from a dream. Jace lowered his rifle. Ivara exhaled. So, he said, are you unemployed now? Temporarily monarch-free, she said, but still full of opinions. Guess we have that in common. Behind them, the chamber lights dimmed one last time, and somewhere deep in the data threads of the Fate engine, a fragment of its last calculation remained. Variable outcome, unknown. Recalibration, deferred. Jace sat on the edge of a sky bridge rail, legs dangling 1,000 meters above the city. Below, Alaris shimmered like someone had spilled bioluminescent ink across a map made of dreams. The air smelled faintly of ozone, overcooked diplomacy, and whatever pastry the floating vendor drone had just zipped past trying to sell him. He waved it away. No, I don't want a buttered neutron loaf. Again. Princess, ex-princess. Ivara approached behind him, her boots surprisingly quiet for someone who used to walk with orchestras of advisors. She stopped beside him and looked out over her newly monarch-free world, ears twitching with a mix of relief and confusion. Nice view, she said. Spectacular, Jace replied, except for the marketing drone that just offered me a 30% discount on commemorative engine implosion souvenirs. You should take it. It comes with a free mug that screams. I've got enough screaming objects in my life. They sat for a moment in companionable silence, broken only by the distant sound of the palace throne attempting to recalibrate itself into a breakfast nook. So, Ivara said, you planning to leave without saying goodbye? I was going to say, see you in a non-linear temporal loop, but figured that might read as passive-aggressive. I'm serious, Jace. You could stay. The council's reforming. We'll need advisors who understand chaos. People who don't believe in fate. I'm flattered, he said, but I've got a list. Places to go. Other timelines to accidentally offend. She smiled. Well, you certainly left this one in better shape than you found it. Not sure the throne agrees. They've installed cushions. Still farts? Subtler now. More of a philosophical hum. He grinned. Besides, Ivara added, your bullet saved us all. Twice. Not bad for someone who showed up drinking questionable coffee. That coffee tasted like betrayal, Jace said. Still better than what your AI served me later. That thing brewed tea that made me question my childhood. I've reprogrammed it. Now it only serves emotionally neutral beverages. Like room temperature regret? Exactly. Below them, the skyline blinked with new construction. The temporal distortions had stabilized. The Fate engine was reduced to inert symbolism in a vault that now served as a cat sanctuary, and Lord Sirian had been permanently reassigned to a diplomatic outpost where the native species communicated entirely through awkward silence and interpretive sneezing. Ivara leaned back on her palms. You know, in some versions of this outcome, we fall in love. I saw that, Jace said. One version even had us opening a bakery. I remember we burned the croissants. I weaponized one. They shared a look, the kind that acknowledged all the versions that wouldn't happen and found comfort in the one that had. You're not what I expected from a human, Ivara said. And you're not what I expected from a princess. What did you expect? More tiaras, less political cunning, slightly shorter ears. I trimmed them once. Caused a diplomatic incident. They stood. Avera offered him a small object, a cube that shimmered between colors, humming softly with inert potential. It's a shard of the old engine, she said. Rewritten. It won't predict anything. Just stores a single moment, in case you want to remember one. Jace pocketed it carefully. I'll keep it next to the peanut butter sandwich that somehow survived 5 alternate realities. Your legacy. That and bad jokes. He turned to leave, but paused. Hey, about that bakery. I still have the keys, she said. Somewhere. I'll hold you to that. He stepped onto the transporter pad. The platform hummed, calculating a route that had never existed before, to a planet that had been theoretical last Tuesday. As the beam engaged, Avera raised a hand. Take care of your timeline, Mercer, he saluted. You too, your unroyalness. With a flash, he was gone. Avera stood alone on the sky bridge, the cube warm in her palm. Behind her, the throne room glitched one last time and turned into a really cozy library. She led it. Somewhere across the stars, a human sniper sipped from his dented flask, stared up at a green sky, and wondered if his next bullet might actually be for peace.